Next on the news, the state and New York City rolling out new restrictions calling for gun-free zones in the wake of a Supreme Court ruling. And
this is Christ in disguise, we would say. So I think we have to have that attitude of helping anyone who comes our way.
We speak with Brooklyn Bishop Emeritus Nicholas DiMarzio about the migrant crisis gripping New York City and the solutions to it. It's the loss of a leader who changed the world. We'll look at the special relationship between former Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev and Pope John Paul II. Plus, the longtime golfing buddies who religiously hit the links every week. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. Locations around New York City, such as churches and even Times Square, will be labeled as gun-free zones as new state laws go into effect on Thursday. One measure limits where firearms can be legally carried in public. And this all comes after a landmark Supreme Court ruling.
Supreme Court has taken dead aim at the safety of New Yorkers. They've placed us in the line of fire.
And in defense, new gun laws are taking effect in New York on Thursday. This after the Supreme Court in June struck down a 100-year-old law that limited who can carry concealed weapons.
They decided to strip away the rights of a governor to protect her citizens from gun violence.
Governor Kathy Hochul says the changes in the law will strengthen background checks for those looking for a concealed carry license, which will now include in-person interviews and a review of the applicant's social media accounts. New gun safety requirements, including 16 hours of classroom training for a firearm permit, making New York the first state to require this, and will prohibit concealed weapons in sensitive locations like churches or other houses of worship, public parks, and Times Square, among other locations.
We don't need guns on our streets. We don't need people carrying guns in our subways. We don't need people carrying guns in our schools. We don't need people carrying guns in our places of worship.
Mayor Eric Adams says the city is putting up gun-free zone signs in Times Square and elsewhere and is launching a campaign to educate people on the new laws, including a PSA.
Starting September 1st, it is a crime to bring a gun to these and other places.
The city will continue its pursuit to be a safe city in America.
While those laws will take effect on Thursday, another one goes into effect on Sunday, which raises the age to buy a semi-automatic weapon to 21. The city of El Paso is now following Texas Governor Greg Abbott's lead. Over the past week, city leaders chartered 4 buses to take undocumented migrants to New York. However, they're expecting the federal government to foot the bill.
Whether it be COTS, COVID vaccines, COVID testing, that's what we've been providing. And chartering buses is no different.
Altogether, Governor Abbott's migrant busing initiative has cost the state $12 million since it began. That amounts to roughly $1,300 per person per ride. Meanwhile, Customs and Border Protection is noting a change in the migrants arriving at the southern border. According to a new analysis, border agents are seeing more migrants coming from Cuba, Colombia, and Venezuela. This year alone, more than 400,000 people emigrated from those countries. That's compared to 2020, when the number of migrants from those countries only amounted to roughly 16,600. Joining us now to talk more about the situation in New York City and the border crisis is Bishop Emeritus Nicholas DiMarzio. He's one of the country's and the church's most renowned experts on migration. Bishop, thanks for joining us. Nice to see you again.
Good to be here.
So my first question is, have you ever seen anything like this? Over the years, you've worked very closely with migrants. Have you ever seen a situation where they're being bused to different parts of the country?
Yeah. No, actually, this is the first time I've seen it in regard to the migrants. That it was basically a political act, unfortunately, to move people, to make a point. It's unfortunate because it looks like the people are the pawns in this game that they're playing. It's not a positive. That's as simple as that.
Yeah, and it seems to be most of the buses are coming to New York City and D.C. What other ways it's not just a problem for Texas and border towns, what other ways can they show people in other states, what they're dealing with?
Well, again, most of these people know where they want to go. They're not coming here without knowing a friend, a relative, someplace. So they should be helped to go to where they can really be properly taken care of. Now we're putting them in hotels. What's the next step? When they go to friends and relatives, they start to get integrated little by little. They do have work permission, most of them, so they could start to work. But in New York City, without too many skills, it's difficult. So when they're going to someone they know, they have a chance to start on a better footing.
Right, not just shipped to,
Right,
to
just
the
shipped to
states
where
that
they don't
they're-
wanna go.
Right, that other people are deciding. You've called these bus loads a humanitarian problem. What are some solutions to that problem?
Well, humanitarian, because these are human beings that are being displaced and don't know exactly how they can find their way in a strange land where they're not knowing the language. People are coming because they're desperate. Either they're selling whatever they have so they can pay coyotes, I mean these smugglers who take them in, or they're so much afraid because of the countries they're in, either because of dictatorships or because of lack of opportunity. Again, this is part of the problem. It's a desperate move on the part of most people.
And even in New York City, you know, some people are having a difficult time. I mean, there's a lack of jobs, there's inflation, our homelessness problem is extremely high. Let's take a look at some of those numbers. Thousands are sleeping in shelters. The Department of Homeless Services logged more than 48,000 in just one night in July. That's thousands more than what it was a few months before, and that number is continuing to rise. So how should New Yorkers with dire needs react to the outpouring of resources for the migrants?
Yeah. Well, again, I think you try to do your best for everybody, and obviously we don't really have a handle on the homeless problem in our city, unfortunately, either. Right. I think we're trying to do better, but putting more people into the situation doesn't help it, certainly. Burden sharing is important. You know, there is a burden in Texas and border states. How do they help these people? But it should be done in an organized way, not just shipping people up, not even knowing when they're coming, being basically forced on buses.
Right.
So it is it's very not a nice situation, let's put it that way.
Absolutely not. And in your column, Walking with Migrants, in the tablet, you said you see them through the eyes of Jesus. But how can we get everyone to feel like that?
Well, it's a move for many people, but to see a stranger, you know, that's what Gospel of Matthew tells us, you know, what have you done for the stranger? What have you done for the person who's sick, person who's has no clothes, who has no food? This is Christ in disguise, we would say. So I think we have to have that attitude of helping anyone who comes our way. You know, Catholic social teaching tells us that the first right of migration is not to migrate. People should be able to live in their own home country where they were born, okay? Well, sometimes we have to do foreign aid. Sometimes we have to help these countries regulate themselves so that people don't feel they have to move or not forced to move. That's not so easy, but as I said there in one of the columns that we had a great meeting. There was, again, in the sense of the country, invited all of the free countries in Latin America to come together. And so there was some plans of what they could try to do together to stop people from moving needlessly. So that, I think that's a sign of hope. It'll take some time, but at least there's a willingness to say, help people stay where they are. Give them the necessary resources so they're not living in dire poverty. All of that is also part of what we teach.
So there's a lot of talk going on. We just need to see that action. Bishop Emeritus Nicholas DiMarzio, the story is not going away. I'm sure we'll talk to you about it again. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Bye.
You can read more of Bishop DiMarzio's expert opinion in this week's tablet. The Bishop Emeritus has a monthly column in the paper where he weighs in about immigration issues and policies. In this month's article, Bishop DiMarzio elaborates further on the migrant bus crisis. And you can read this month's article and all of Bishop's previous articles on the paper's website, thetablet.org. Now to a story first brought to you by the Tablet newspaper. LaGuardia's long-awaited interfaith chapel seems to be taking flight. According to the architectural renderings, the faith space, once billed as just a small conference room, will now have at least another 160 square feet, high ceilings, and a wall of stained glass windows. But according to the chaplain there, the journey to get to these new plans came with a lot of turbulence. You can read the whole story in this week's paper, starting from when the Tablet broke the story in 2021, right after a request was denied for a proposed chapel, and the coverage of the long months that followed, including a sit-down between the Diocese of Brooklyn and representatives from the Port Authority. Be sure to subscribe to the Tablet so you can follow all of their in-depth coverage of this and other stories around Brooklyn and Queens that you need to know. Just go online to thetablet.org. And if you would like to read more about the LaGuardia story, you can also find the story on that website, or you can pick up a copy of the paper from your local church. Also tonight, they're struggling to get something needed to live.
It's very frustrating to have to fight for some water.
Rain and flooding in Mississippi leading to a lack of safe drinking water.
It's not a matter of if our system would fail, but when our system would fail.
Right now on Currents News, the Mississippi water crisis. Residents in the capital city of Jackson have been scrambling to find solutions. The governor says there's not even enough water to fight fires. Ivan Rodriguez looks at what's being done to fix the dire situation.
For many Americans, the idea of not having usable water is unheard of. In Jackson, Mississippi, it's a reality they know too well.
For like the last few weeks, even like the last few months, like Jackson always has a water problem.
I'm tired of not being able to cook, clean, and do like I need to do.
On Monday, an already hobbling main treatment plant was pushed to failure from flooding over the weekend. With Jackson's water system in a state of emergency, distribution sites were set up to give 1 case of water per car. At the Hawkins Field Airport, about 700 cases of water were gone in just 2 hours, meaning many people who waited in long lines with hundreds of other cars were turned away.
It's been hard, like I say, especially when you have more than one, when you have a family.
Jackson Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba says water could be restored this week, and they're working to restore pressure and refill tanks across the city.
This is the accumulation of years and years of accumulated problems. Challenges that we have been lifting up for the better part of 3 to 4 years.
The lack of water also forcing schools to go remote and businesses to close. The city has already been on a boil water notice since July, and once water pressure is restored to the system, the focus will be ensuring it's safe to drink. For now, even boiling water might not be safe.
Because these pumps are broken, because there's been this flooding, you can have problems just simply disinfecting the water.
Ivan Rodriguez, Currents News.
The Diocese of Jackson in Mississippi was hit particularly hard by the recent floods. Praying for a speedy recovery, Bishop Joseph Kopacz released a statement saying, "We are pleased that President Biden, Governor Tate Reeves, and Jackson Mayor Chokwe Lumumba are working together to address the water situation in Jackson. We pray for long-term solutions to this problem and a swift response to get water flowing back into all Jackson homes and businesses." Currently, the Catholic Charities Disaster Response Team is assisting families displaced by the flooding. If you'd like to help out, you can head over to CatholicCharitiesJackson.org and click Donate. There's a lot more news headed your way. Mourning tonight over the loss of Mikhail Gorbachev. Next, the special bond the former Soviet leader had with Pope John Paul II. Plus, Pope Francis is poised to beatify another Holy Father who had a short reign. And an investigation into an elementary school principal who was caught on camera saying he wouldn't hire Catholics.
There are now some big changes to the Tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
Catholics need not apply. A school district in Greenwich, Connecticut is now launching a full investigation into an assistant principal after he was caught on camera saying he wouldn't hire Catholics.
If you find out someone is Catholic, then what?
The video posted by the conservative activist group Project Veritas shows Jeremy Boland, assistant principal at Cobb Elementary, admitting that he discriminates against Catholic applicants. School officials say they are not making any public statements as they investigate the matter, but they did reiterate their stance against discriminatory hiring practices. While speaking at a roundtable discussion on reproductive health care last week, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi made a remark on abortion access that directly contradicted her Catholic faith. The Democratic lawmaker said in part, the fact that this is such an assault on women of color and women, lower-income families, is just sinful. It's sinful. It's wrong that they would be able to say to women what they think women should be doing with their lives and their bodies. Mourning tonight over the loss of former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev.
History is a fickle lady, and you can expect surprises from history, but I do know that I did what I did and that I can be proud of what I did.
Gorbachev, who helped end the Cold War, died Tuesday at the age of 91. While he was the leader of the Soviet Union when communism fell, Gorbachev also had a special relationship with Pope John Paul II. Justin McClellan looks at how the two became close and worked together to change the course of history.
Pope John Paul II and Mikhail Gorbachev developed a personal relationship that helped improve relations between the Vatican and the Soviet Union and lead to the eventual opening of the Soviet regime. In 2014, the current Russian ambassador to the Holy See shared this about the meeting between the Pope and the Russian president, which took place on December 1st, 1989.
President Gorbachev was delighted after meeting John Paul II. In fact, he spoke very highly of him. He was impressed by the knowledge the Pope had, by his spirit of virtue, also for sending his encouragement to the people of the Soviet Union.
John Paul II's meeting with Gorbachev was an endorsement of perestroika, or reconstruction, the reform the Russian leader put in place which adopted elements of liberal economics. This is what he said in 2003 about the Polish Pope. Their relationship was the research focus of José Ramón Garitagoitia. He published a thesis on John Paul II prefaced by Gorbachev and has met both of them. He says the relationship is precisely what Pope Francis calls for in Fratelli Tutti. It is a clear example of what Pope Francis lays out. As two very different personalities, they are able through dialogue to recognize in the other their virtues, values, and interests, and try to put themselves in the place of the other to understand them. Their example is one of dialogue between two seemingly irreconcilable positions, but which ultimately managed to change the world.
That was Justin McClellan reporting. Gorbachev won the 1990 Nobel Peace Prize for his role in ending the Cold War. And from one pope to another, Pope John Paul I is to be beatified and proclaimed blessed this coming Sunday. It's the last step needed before being canonized as a Catholic saint. Pope Francis will preside over the beatification mass in St. Peter's Square, during which a team of postulators will gift the Holy Father with a reliquary containing the relics of the new blessed. John Paul I held the papacy for just 33 days. Despite this, he was well known as the Smiling Pope and was the first pontiff in centuries to refuse a formal coronation. Again, the Holy Father will beatify Pope John Paul I this Sunday on September 4th, and you can watch the Mass and beatification rite here on Net TV. It will air at 7:30 p.m. Sunday, right after Currents News. Parishioners are trying to pick up the pieces after a fire severely damaged a historic Catholic church in Kansas. According to officials, Mary Queen of Angels Catholic Church in the Diocese of Wichita was struck by lightning and consumed by fire on Monday. Firefighters worked throughout the night and into the early hours of Tuesday to save the 162-year-old church. And while the fire left extensive damage, the altar, a crucifix, and multiple statues were left untouched by the flames and debris. Still to come on Currents News, they were rescued from a breeding facility, but now these four-legged friends are on their way to their forever homes. And no way is age getting in the way of their game. We'll meet with the golfing buddies who regularly tee off every week. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. took a trip to their forever home Wednesday morning. More than 100 Beagles flying from Maryland to San Diego so they can be put up for adoption. They were taken from a breeding facility earlier this month after the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against it, claiming it had numerous violations. The Humane Society says the dogs were being bred to be sold to labs for experimentation. The incident came around the same time as almost 4,000 Beagles were taken from a similar facility in Virginia. Humane Society officials say the dogs were used to test the safety of drugs, medical devices, and pesticides. And finally tonight, they are longtime friends who share a love of the lynx, and the two are regulars at a golf course in Fargo, North Dakota. As Kevin Wallivan reports, they both shoot well below their age, which isn't bad when you consider that one of them is 100 years old.
Boy, if I got pencils in here.
You have to get up before the birds to play golf with these two.
You're teeing off first because you won.
Max Olson is 92.
See, he's way down there and I'm way back there.
His slightly older golf partner, Wendell Johnson, is 100.
You see how nice he shoots?
You can find the two at Edgewood by 8 a.m. twice a week. And you know what? They both hit the ball well.
We've had quite some experiences over the years.
But they're known to rib each other when golfing under pressure.
Oh, Wendell.
Max was a barber in Fargo for 40 years. Wendell worked at the post office for 30.
Wendell has to make his now, or otherwise he's in trouble. See? That's how I beat him. Okay, Wendell, you're up because you're the best player.
They didn't offer this information freely, but both men have served our country. Max in the Korean War, and 100-year-old Wendell. Well, he's a Purple Heart recipient, a Marine in World War II, Okinawa.
Okay. He's right down the middle. Yet.
These two have stories. It's a little hard at times for Max to get around, and so when he got the golf cart stuck in the mud this summer...
Well, I had to help him get out of there. The wheels were just spinning, so...
It was 100-year-old Wendell.
I had to help him.
To the rescue.
Pushed it out.
And sometimes it takes teamwork. The other day, Max was trying to hit out of the sand trap. He hit his ball out, but he couldn't get out. And so Wendell, who's 100, simply reached over and pulled Max out. Talk about aging gracefully and with style. These two golfers finished 9 holes at Edgewood, and it only cost Max a dime. Not bad for a Monday.
Well, that's what it's all about. Yeah. To have fun and get out in the fresh air and move around.
A pretty good start to the week.
Can't win them all. Wendell got me on that one.
What a great story. That was Kevin Wallivan reporting. And as he said, Max and Wendell can be found on the links by 8 a.m. at least twice a week. Good for them. And that is Current News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.